Hello, welcome to my channel, True Crime with KT. If you like what you see and hear today, please consider subscribing below and liking this video and sharing it. I appreciate you very much. This case is one that was requested by one of my subscribers, and I'm always more than happy to cover something if there's something that you're interested in, a topic that you want to know more about in the true crime area. I will research it and I'll do a video for you. I take recommendations and suggestions as well. I'm going to talk about the Sylvia Likens case. And I have about 6 pages of notes and I have lots of information. So I'm just going to try to take it slow and easy and get this information to you. And it may end up being in different videos. Maybe it might take 2 or 3 videos, but we'll see how it goes. There are many people who are familiar with this case. There have been movies made and several books written and lots of videos about the topic. So most of you are probably going to know a little bit, if not a lot, about this case. But for those who don't, I'm going to cover the facts first, and then I'll give a little bit of my opinion and theory about the topic. Sylvia Likens was the daughter of Lester and Elizabeth Likens, and they were from Indianapolis, Indiana. She had brothers and sisters, and her parents went to work with the carnival, and her mother had gone to jail for shoplifting right prior to that. And this is all in the year 1965, all of this. And when the mother was released, she joined the father with the traveling carnival, and her children were placed to live with different family members, with the grandmother, and so on. But Sylvia and her little sister, Jenny, who had had polio and had a bad leg because of that, were placed with a Gertrude Benajewski, who had 2 daughters that went to high school with Sylvia and Jenny. Gertrude herself was the mother of 7 children, and she was given $20 a week for the boarding of Sylvia and Jenny by the parents. However, things got rough. According to one source, Sylvia had been accused of being a prostitute by one or maybe both of the daughters that she went to school with, and as a result spread the same rumor about one of the other girls. And I believe this is when the retaliation started, if that's a true account. It started out that her parents were a day or 2 late for sending in the $20 a week, and when it happened, Gertrude had slapped, I believe, Jenny in the face and paddled both of the girls bare bottom with a very thick paddle and other instruments. Gertrude seemed to enlist the assistance of her other children to help torture Sylvia. Sylvia became the focus of the violence after that. There were also about a half a dozen or a dozen kids in the neighborhood that also participated in some of it. But some of the things that went on were Sylvia was refused sufficient food. She was given leftovers or spoiled food out of the garbage can. She was kicked and beaten. Cigarettes were put out on her. She was kept from going to school. She was kept down in a basement. At one point, she was forced to insert a Coke bottle into her vagina in front of the other children. She was kicked in her genitals as well. She was force-fed a hot dog that was overloaded with condiments and spices, and she vomited, and then she was forced to eat the vomit. The words, "I am a prostitute and proud of it," were engraved into her stomach with a needle. And she was also burned the letter S on her stomach. Gertrude was a very frail, small, asthmatic woman. She didn't seem to be in very good health. She was reportedly depressed. She had also had a miscarriage. She was a churchgoer and made sure the children went to church. Gertrude had been divorced at least 2 times, and she was on her 3rd marriage. She was physically abused by one of her husbands. She was abandoned by them, and she had to take odd jobs to make ends meet to pay the bills. By October of 1965, Sylvia had succumbed to her mistreatment, and she ended up dying. They tried to perform CPR, reportedly, but they ended up having to call the police. They told the police that she had been beaten by some neighborhood boys, but the police did not believe that story because some of her injuries and scars were old. Gertrude ended up being arrested along with her daughter, her son, and 2 neighborhood boys. Gertrude was found guilty of 1st-degree murder, and her daughter, Paula, was charged with 2nd-degree murder. The neighbor, Richard Hobbs, who was 15 years old, was charged with manslaughter, and her son, who was 13, was charged with manslaughter. And another neighborhood boy, Coy Hubbard, was charged with manslaughter and was sentenced to 2 to 21 years. Gertrude pled not guilty, but was found guilty, and then she was given the opportunity, along with her daughter Paula, to have a second trial because the Indiana Supreme Court said that there was prejudicial atmosphere. Gertrude pled not guilty because of insanity for her second trial, but was again found guilty. She had also tried to accuse her asthma medication for making her not know what she was doing, and also said that her children must have committed the crimes. Paula pled guilty for her second trial, and she was sentenced for voluntary manslaughter instead of the 2nd-degree murder charges. Paula served 2 years and was released from prison. The 3 boys were released on parole for good behavior after serving about 2 years. Gertrude was sentenced to life in prison, but she was paroled after serving 20 years. And she was paroled in 1985, and she moved to Iowa and changed her name. And she ended up dying of cancer, lung cancer, in June of 1990. I was thinking, what was going on in society in 1965? I was just curious, so I kind of took a look back, and the Vietnam War was going on, of course, and the news was full of violence and fear. And there was an increase in the amount of troops sent to Vietnam that year. The civil rights marches were going on, and local police officers and state troopers rushed and attacked protesters. They attacked them with tear gas and nightsticks. Bloody Sunday happened in Selma, Alabama, where a march on March 17th was full of brutal images of an attack, and it was televised. People were badly injured, They were beaten with clubs. Even white ministers were attacked. White ministers who were marching for rights for the African Americans to vote. Many people died. Many were hospitalized. And these were peaceful marches that were met by brutal attacks. Also, in April, on Palm Sunday, several states, including Indiana, were met by 147 tornadoes in that area. There were 271 fatalities. 1,000 people were injured. It just seems to me that during that period of time, there was a lot of stress going on, a lot of death and destruction on the news. Malcolm X was even shot that year. There was just a lot going on. Everybody that hears about this case is baffled, and they wonder, why would these children and these neighborhood kids participate in this brutality and torture and eventual death of a 16-year-old? Why didn't any of the children tell their parents? Why didn't Jenny, Sylvia's sister, tell her sister or grandparents that lived in the same neighborhood? And I thought about that. And I think that, they had been taught to obey your parents, to obey people in positions of power. They probably thought, she goes to church, she knows the difference between right and wrong. And there was a commonality between them. They all went to the same school, they went to the same church, they lived in the same neighborhood. And Gertrude was in a position of power. So I think that because of the commonality and the thought that you should obey parents or people in positions of power, they thought it was okay. And plus they were seeing police and lawmakers who are people who were supposed to uphold the law beat on people on the news. Vietnam was going on. People were being killed on both sides. And there were the civil rights activists who were marching peacefully, but they were subjected to violence. So I'm just wondering if they maybe thought a certain amount of violence was acceptable. Other people have analyzed this case and said that perhaps Gertrude was jealous of Sylvia because she was vivacious, she was well-liked, she was pretty, she was in good health, had a great personality, as people reported, and that maybe there was some jealousy there. But I'm not sure about that, and I'm not sure that any of the violence that was going on had anything to do with why others participated in that, why the children participated in it. I think it's important, the message that we are giving children, if there's wars and violence going on that's on the news. We have to be careful to tell our children you can't trust all the adults in your life, and that they should have their own sense of what is right and wrong. I think I covered about everything here, and so I'm not going to do any more videos on this topic as of now, but I do appreciate your opinions if you will share them below. And if you have any other cases that you would like for me to cover, I'm going to be working on another one that someone else has suggested. But thank you for listening and watching.